The sky over Dubai was flawless, blue, polished, not a single ripple of disturbance. And yet, somewhere inside that calm, something felt wrong. Spectators leaned forward in their seats, their attention locked on a single aircraft carving through the morning heat. The HAL Tejas, a fighter jet known for its agility and pride of Indian aviation, was performing its final maneuver. But then the sound shifted, subtle at first, almost impossible to detect unless you were listening for it, a faint flutter in the engine note, a vibration that didn't belong. And within seconds, that flawless sky turned into the backdrop of a disaster no one expected. The jet dipped lower than planned, slicing through a pocket of turbulent air as the pilot attempted to regain altitude. Cameras flashed, spectators whispered. The commentators hesitated mid-sentence. What was supposed to be a flawless aerobatic pass suddenly felt strained, unstable, as if the aircraft itself was fighting something unseen. The Tejas rolled sharply, its wings catching the light for a fleeting moment. One last moment where everything still looked normal. Before the jet entered an unexpected descent, people in the stands rose to their feet. Some stepped backward. Others instinctively reached for their phones, not knowing whether to film or to brace. The jet's nose pitched downward, not aggressively, but just enough to break the perfect symmetry of its routine. It was almost graceful in appearance, but anyone with aviation sense could feel the tension in the movement. It was the kind of motion pilots train thousands of hours to correct. And in that instant, it was clear the pilot was fighting for control. The aircraft's engine let out a harsh note, choked, uneven, like metal grinding against its own will. The Tejas responded with a brief climb, a last attempt to recover altitude. For a split second, hope fluttered through the crowd. But the jet tilted again, rolling onto its side as the nose dipped once more. This time, it was clear there would be no recovery. The pilot made a final maneuver, a desperate pull to level the aircraft, trying to guide it away from the crowd, away from the airshow grounds, away from the endless rows of spectators who had come to watch the beauty of aviation, not its darkest moments. The impact was fast. The ground shook as a tight plume of smoke curled upward, breaking the calm skyline with violent finality. A wave of heat radiated outward, followed by a delayed rumble that rolled across the runway like a shockwave of disbelief. People gasped, some screamed, others stood frozen, unable to process what had just unfolded in front of them. A demonstration flight had turned into a tragedy in less than 15 seconds. Silence consumed the stands as the smoke thickened. The crowd stared at the rising column of black, their expressions a mixture of confusion, shock, and sorrow. Fire crews raced across the tarmac, their sirens slicing through the stunned quiet. Emergency vehicles swarmed the crash zone, engines roaring as teams sprinted out, carrying extinguishers, hoses, and gear built for moments exactly like this. Moments everyone hoped would never arrive. Somewhere inside that chaos, firefighters reached the wreckage. Flames curled around the twisted shape of what once was a high-performance fighter jet. The cockpit area burned intensely, the heat distorting the air around it. Every second mattered. The pilot's life depended on it, but even as the crews fought their way closer, battling smoke and flame, one truth started to settle across the runway. The impact had been too severe. A hush rolled through the grandstands as the announcer's voice cracked over the loudspeakers. Spectators braced. Some closed their eyes. Others clutched their children or held the rails, as if grounding themselves to reality. And then the announcement came, the kind of announcement airshow organizers fear more than any other. The pilot had not survived. Gasps, cries, silence. Every reaction poured into the air like invisible waves. This was no ordinary loss. This was a pilot who had dedicated years of training, discipline, and courage to the sky. A man who had flown countless hours, mastered complex maneuvers, and represented his country on one of the world's most prestigious aviation stages. And now, in a tragic instant, he was gone. Around the crash site, heat shimmered from the smoldering wreck. The once sleek aircraft was now unrecognizable, scorched metal, fractured panels, broken landing gear resting in angles that defied the precision of its engineering. The HAL Tejas, a symbol of national pride, lay silent on foreign soil, surrounded by foam and fire crews, battling the last stubborn flames. Yet the story of this tragedy didn't end with the impact. It unfolded in the hearts of the people watching, in the shadowed faces of the ground crews who had trained for emergencies but never wished to see one, and in the solemn steps of the investigators who approached the wreckage with heavy eyes. Because now, the world needed answers. Answers about what caused the failure, what went wrong in the moments before the crash, and why a pilot with exceptional skill could not recover a jet that had performed flawlessly hours before. Investigators began cordoning off the crash zone, placing bright markers around fragments of the aircraft that had scattered across the ground. Every piece mattered. Each shard of metal, each burned component, each section of wiring held clues to the final seconds of the Tejas flight. Engineers from the airshow, representatives of the Indian delegation, and aviation experts from the UAE gathered to observe the wreck from behind safety lines. Their expressions were somber, focused, burdened by the weight of responsibility. The first question on everyone's mind was the same: what caused the sudden descent? Airshows are carefully controlled environments designed with strict safety protocols. Demonstration flights are meticulously rehearsed. Pilots running these displays are among the most experienced and disciplined aviators in the world. So how could a crash occur in a setting where every detail was planned? The answer, at least in those first hours, was as cloudy as the smoke still rising from the wreck. Officials reviewed footage from spectators, journalists, security cameras, and airshow broadcast feeds. Video after video captured the same sequence: a smooth ascent, a sharp roll, a dip, and attempt to recover. But in each recording, the critical moment, the instant where everything changed, looked subtle, almost hidden. Some footage suggested an aerodynamic stall. Others hinted at a mechanical failure. A handful of clips revealed a flicker in the engine exhaust, a brief interruption in the jet's thrust. By late afternoon, engineers were already discussing possible scenarios: a failure in the control surfaces, a mechanical malfunction in the tail section, a sudden loss of thrust during a maneuver. Each possibility carried different implications, and each demanded careful examination. The wreckage would tell the truth, but the truth was buried beneath layers of twisted metal, burned panels, and the emotional weight of loss. Meanwhile, across the airfield, the crowd remained in a subdued haze. Families who had come expecting excitement now carried silent children toward the exits. Aviation enthusiasts who once cheered at every maneuver now stood still, staring at the horizon where the smoke was slowly drifting away. Even pilots, seasoned professionals accustomed to the risks of flight, walked with heavier steps, their eyes fixed on the ground. Airshows celebrate human mastery over the air, precision, skill, innovation, and courage. But in moments like this, they also remind us of the unforgiving nature of flight. A machine designed to cut through the sky at supersonic speed must operate flawlessly at every second. A pilot must maintain control even when conditions shift in unpredictable ways. And when something goes wrong, when a system falters or an unexpected force intervenes, the consequences can be immediate and irreversible. Back at the wreckage, fire crews worked to cool down the remaining hot spots as investigators approached the cockpit area. The force of the impact had shattered the forward section of the jet, leaving charred remnants of instruments and twisted control panels. The pilot's ejection system was examined, the seat checked for activation indicators, the canopy traced for signs of deployment. These details mattered. They would reveal whether the pilot had attempted to eject and whether he had enough altitude or time to escape. News outlets around the world began reporting the crash. Headlines appeared across major platforms. Some highlighted the tragedy of the pilot's death. Others focused on the Tejas aircraft itself, India's domestically developed fighter jet showcased with pride on international stages. Aviation communities lit up with discussions, analyses, theories, and condolences. Across social media, pilots and engineers shared their grief. their respect for the fallen aviator, and their support for the investigation. In India, the news struck hard. The Tejas program symbolized years of innovation, research, and national achievement. Pilots trained long and rigorously to master its capabilities. And here, thousands of kilometers from home, one of those pilots had given his life in the service of his country, performing a maneuver that countless observers had admired before tragedy struck. As night settled over Dubai, the crash zone was illuminated by floodlights. Investigators worked through the dark, documenting every inch of the wreck. Photographs were taken, measurements recorded, fragments collected in numbered bags for later analysis. The silence of the night contrasted with the earlier chaos. Only the humming of portable generators and the distant sound of emergency vehicles remained as a reminder of the day's events. Behind the security perimeter, a group of pilots from various countries stood together. They spoke softly about the pilots' final attempts to